Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
This message comes from Greenlight. Ready to start talking to your kids about financial literacy? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app that teaches kids and teens how to earn, save, spend wisely, and invest with your guardrails in place. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Join millions of parents and kids building healthy financial habits together on Greenlight. Get started risk-free at greenlight.com/audio.
It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You can go to emailrevealer.com and get a copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. If you go to emailrevealer.com, you can get an autographed copy of the book. But if you're in a hurry, you need the book right away, you can go to amazon.com and get a copy of the book, but it won't be autographed. How to Become a Successful Private Investigator by Ed Opperman. Also at emailrevealer.com, we have kind of PI services. If you think your spouse is cheating on you, you give us their email address. We trace it back to online dating websites. So all different kinds of services down there at emailrevealer.com. We got a very interesting show today. As a matter of fact, the guest today was referred to us by TJ Sanfilippo from the Awake Radio Network, who hosts a show every Wednesday night. I think it's called Navigating the Sticks. His name is Stephen Smith, and he's the author of The Psychopath Machine, A Story of Resistance and Survival. The book just came out, just brand new, hot off the presses. As a matter of fact, the website, thepsychopathmachine.com, is not even up and live yet. Maybe by the time you hear this show, it'll be live by then. But as of this recording, it's not even live yet. And Stephen was a victim of the MKULTRA program up in Canada. So, Stephen Smith, are you there?
I'm here, Ed. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Very, I tell you, very interesting story, and it's one of these stories, it's a fascinating story, unless you had to live through it. You know what I mean?
I did.
Yeah, I know. So, tell us about yourself. Who is Stephen Smith?
I'm 67 years old. I'm recently retired, sort of retired, but still pretty busy with what used to be our business. My wife and I live in the country. We have a really nice, quiet existence. And I finally had time to write this book, which has been in the making for, I guess, 40 plus years.
So you still living up in Canada?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. West Coast, Sunshine Coast, beautiful place.
67. I tell you, when I was talking to you, I thought you'd be like 40 years old. I thought you were younger than me.
I know, I have a funny voice. I could turn my camera on me, but nobody really wants to see my gray, grizzled face.
I know what you mean. That's why I keep my camera off too. I just had yesterday, I was telling you off the air that I had on, what was her name? Her name was Liddy Denier, who was the girlfriend of Ambassador Stevens. And you know who she was before she hooked up with Ambassador Stevens?
No idea.
She was the actress. She played Jane in Tarzan on the TV series Tarzan and Ace. She was gorgeous, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember watching that when I was a kid.
Yeah. I wanted to keep the camera on for her, but for you.
Okay. I understand.
Yeah. Hey, so what did you do? What kind of business did you have?
Plastic fabricating.
Okay, very cool. Okay.
Something else that you might find interesting. I don't know if you've heard of this or not, but something called a vaporizer. I actually invented that.
Wait a second. The vaporizer that blows up steam when you have a cold?
No. That's what it was before I invented this vaporizer and coined the term. It was actually a medical device. It's for consuming marijuana in a medical sense.
Get out of here. Okay.
Yeah, I invented that. That was, although I didn't really promote myself that much, we sold an awful lot of those, and it was very good for us.
What'd you sell? You sold them at a High Times magazine? How'd you sell them? How did you sell?
All over the place. We exported them all over the world. We created a global market.
And how did it work?
It's electric. You plug it in. It gently heats the herb to the point where the THC, which is a light crystal, a light molecule, is vaporized without smoke. So there's no combustion. All you get is the active ingredients. Thus, it's not bad for your lungs. And, people who know the history of this know that ultimately it resulted in e-cigarettes, the electronic vaporized cigarette thing.
Get out of here, yeah.
That was a spin-off from the original vaporizer. So anyway, we owned a plastic fabricating business, and this was one of the products that I was manufacturing, and it really took off and did well for us.
Yeah, very cool, because I haven't smoked pot in years and years, but when I did, you'd get all that phlegm, you'd get all that phlegm in your chest from smoking. Yeah. Yes, I never enjoyed that part of it.
Well, the idea of this was medical. It's it's proven that it has a lot of medical benefits, but smoking anything is not good for you. So this worked. It was a harebrained idea. Yeah. It was an experiment, but it worked.
Well, of course, when I smoked, it was only for medical reasons, of course.
Of course.
I had all kinds of medical issues. So tell us about this story, the Psychopath Machine, a story of resistance and survival. Give us an idea. What happened here?
Okay, there's two parts to this book. The first is my own personal story. It's a biography. What happened to me in 1968 when I was a young hippie hitchhiking across Canada and got waylaid and detained by the police for stealing a car, actually, and wound up in Oak Ridge Hospital for the Criminally Insane in Southern Ontario, along with murderers and rapists, serial killers, the worst of the worst, people found not guilty by reason of insanity, and basically held for life. So here I found myself with these people for car theft, not realizing what was going on, but I was in the middle of what turned out to be MKULTRA experience.
Now, how come if they caught you for car theft, they threw you into this mental institution?
Well, it's in the book.
Right.
What happened was I had 2 hits of acid in my pocket, LSD.
Right.
Now, remember, I was a hippie. It was 1960s. I was young and foolish. And I got caught for stealing this car. It was kind of an act of desperation at the time. It's better explained in the book. But being really foolish, I ate these 2 hits of acid. And the people, I guess the court and the police, they didn't know what was happening and they thought I was crazy. So off I went. But there was more to it than that. As it turns out, through investigation over decades and a lot of access to information and documents, clinical records I got hold of, I discovered that they were actually looking for people like me. Mm-hmm. They were actively searching for people to include in these experiments between a certain age group, a certain demographic. I fit into that, and I was shipped off into it.
Did you ever look back and think, boy, if I just would have took the charges for the LSD, I would have been out of this in and out a lot sooner than what they put me through?
Oh, there wasn't even any charges for the LSD, and the car theft charge was dropped.
Oh, boy.
They never proceeded with it at all.
But I'm saying if you didn't take
to court for it, it was dropped instantly.
I'm saying if you didn't take the LSD, if you didn't swallow it, if you just would have took the bust for it, you probably would have been in and out way quicker than all this they put you through.
Oh, absolutely, without question, no doubt.
So now, what'd you find out? That they were looking for young kids who had no stable home life and no one was looking for you? Is that what they were looking for?
Well, they were looking for, in my case, what I think is, they knew full well that I wasn't crazy, and they knew full well I wasn't a psychopath.
Right.
But I think what they wanted was some people who were the same age group, the same demographic,
Gotcha.
Who didn't have a family to back them up. And I guess I would be called part of a control group. If you're going to conduct experiments on a certain group of people, you need to have in those experiments people that aren't part of that group in order to make the judgment about whether your experiments are effective or not. So I see myself as part of a control, one who wasn't crazy, but was put through the same thing.
So now, when you first get thrown into this Oak Ridge mental institution, like, were you trying to tell the doctors and stuff, hey, guys, you got the wrong guy, let me out of here?
Oh, of course. But you know how that goes, as you're being dragged backwards down a hallway, screaming that I'm not crazy. It doesn't go over well.
Oh, my God. So then what were the first few days like? Did they have you in restraints?
Oh, yeah. Nightmarish. Absolutely nightmarish. This was not a hospital setting. This was a prison setting. The building was, the physical structure of the building itself is super maximum security. Multiple layers of bars, slamming doors, everything made of steel, nothing resembling a hospital at all.
Okay, this is a nightmare. Now, now they dropped the charges, but they said, but you're going to be remanded to this mental institution, right?
Yeah.
Now, when you're in there, was there any hope? Was there anybody working on getting you out? Was there any hope of getting out? Did you have any hope?
No hope at all. No hope at all. As far as I understood at the time, I might well be there for life, as most of the people surrounding me were.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
There's people that had been in there for 30 years.
Now, were you able to talk to some of the other patients or the other inmates?
Oh, that's what it was all about. This was, boy, there's so many facets to this. It's difficult to explain what was going on in a soundbite, but they were conducting experiments with drugs, sensory deprivation, literal torture, really waterboarding, horrible things, nightmarish things. All these experiments were basically conducted on people that nobody gave a damn about. They were killers. They were mass murderers, child rapists. So they didn't elicit a whole lot of sympathy. What the doctor who was running this program, his name was Elliot T. Barker. He was his history is very strange. He actually went to East Germany and China. This is according to his own words. I have his email discussion with me many years later in the research for this book, where he admits to going to China. I don't understand this because it was before China was even open to the West. But he went there studying Chinese prison techniques and Chinese brainwashing techniques, as well as East German. I have his own words, and I will release that on the website.
Well, let me ask you this now. What was his capacity? Was he working for the military when he went to China, intelligence agency? What capacity did he describe to you that he was able to go there?
This hospital was a government-run hospital. He was hired, as I understand it, he was hired right out of university, right out of psychiatry school or medical school. He was hired by Dr. Boyd, who was the administrator of Oak Ridge, but he was given a 1-year sabbatical and traveled all over the world studying techniques from various Iron Curtain communist countries, then came back to Oak Ridge and started this program ostensibly to cure psychopaths. But he understood, and they understood at the time, that you can't cure a psychopath. A psychopath is what they are. You can't cure them. My own belief is it's not really a mental illness. It's an environmental adaptation. There's a certain number of psychopaths in any given population, and it pretty much remains consistent. They knew that you could not cure them, but what they were doing was essentially trying to uncover psychopaths, trying to spot them, first of all. Secondly, they were trying to put them to use. You see, a psychopath is basically someone without compassion, without a conscience. That can be very useful if you're looking for hired killers, or if you're looking for mercenary soldiers, or even police. If you want to hire brutal police, you don't want to hire people with compassion and conscience. You want people who are cold-hearted, who can do the job for you. I believe that what they were doing, and I have a lot of evidence of this backing up my story and the book, documentation, not just my words. What I discovered in years of researching this, my opinion doesn't count, or the opinion of an ex-mental patient is just an opinion of someone that may or may not be credible. What counts in this is documentation, proof, evidence. And I spent a lifetime looking for that before even thinking about writing a book. And I have it. What they were doing was, at first they thought they could create psychopaths, but then they realized, no, what we have to do is uncover them, find psychopaths, and put them to use. And they did. I have lots of evidence of the, in a sense, their experiment failed. The official explanation is their work on psychopaths was a failure. That's the official explanation. But it wasn't a failure. It was a huge success. They found out exactly what they wanted to know. That is, how to find psychopaths and how to use them, how to direct them. I could show you several patients who wound up huge successes in their terms.
Yeah, you said that they would put them to use. How are they putting them to use?
Well, mercenaries, for example. I'll give you one example. Matthew Charles Lamb, in, I believe, 1964, walked up to 4 people at a bus stop in Toronto and gunned them down.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
Killed 2 of them and maimed the other 2. No reason, no explanation. He wound up in this hospital. So he was one of Dr. Barker's favorite subjects. This guy was given more LSD than anybody in clinical history, as I understand it. Very intensive on this guy. To be brief about it, he was ultimately released from a lieutenant governor's warrant. That means you're in a nut house for life. He was released into the care of Dr. Barker, where he lived on his 200-acre farm with him and his family. He next turned up in Israel, where he joined the IDF and fought in the Yom Kippur War. He left Israel disillusioned with the IDF and later returned to the farm, where Dr. Barker, in his own words, said to me, where Lamb went to Rhodesia, which was the only place where a war was going on at the time. And he was killed by his own men in 1976. So briefly, that's the outline of Matthew Charles Lamb. You can look him up on Wikipedia. That's a whole other story, the Wikipedia about him. The Wikipedia, by the way, is written by an IDF, Israeli Defense Forces guy. He's the author of the Wikipedia. You would wonder why. Anyway, if you look closely at Matt Lamb's life, and believe me, I have a lot of stuff about him, it becomes really clear that, hey, they used this guy. They did something to him. They directed him. And then they released this guy, gave him a passport. He went to Israel. God knows why Israel would accept a guy fresh out of a mental hospital for the criminally insane who had murdered 2 people. And they gave him military training. Then he came back, lived with the doctor, then once again was sent off to fight as a mercenary in a war. Look it up. It's all there.
That's terrifying. Now,
it's jaw-dropping.
Yeah. Now, did you meet this guy?
Oh, yes. I knew him well.
And you're saying that this guy was documented as given the most LSD out of any other subject, a trial suspect ever?
Yep. Yeah. Not just LSD, neither. I have, you know what? I have a video. The history of this video is pretty interesting. I write about it in the book. The name of the video is F Ward. It was filmed in 1972, shortly after I was released. And this video is an absolute horror. It's like something you would expect out of Soviet Russia. At the same time that we were condemning the Russians for the kind of activity that they were doing with brainwashing and treating mental patients, we were doing exactly the same or worse. This F Ward was produced by CTV, narrated by Norm Perry, who at the time was kind of Canada's Walter Cronkite.
Okay.
Now, this video is embargoed. If you ask CTV, they'll say it doesn't exist. But I have what I believe to be the only copy of this on VHS. Matt Lamb and others are in this video. And let me tell you, it's dynamite. There's things in this video that the world's got to see.
Well, now, how were you able to take the video? I'm not following.
The video, this was a documentary made by CTV.
Oh, okay.
Inside Oak Ridge that filmed. They invited cameras in. They actually invited these people in to show the world what they were doing. The thing is so cynical. Barker actually believed that the best place to hide this was right in front of your eyes.
Now, with this Lamb, this Matthew Charles Lamb, now, when you would talk to him and hang out with him, did you ever ask him why he committed this murder in the first place at this bus stop?
He has no idea.
Now,
he has no idea why he did it.
Now,
no.
Did he talk to you saying, hey, when I get out of here, I hope to be a mercenary and go to Rhodesia and go to anything like that?
No, nothing like that.
Then what would he say that he wanted to do when he got out of there?
Well, it wouldn't be up to him to say what he wanted to do. This story is complex. He was, when you put this together bit by bit, there's just too much to this. There's too many small pieces to this puzzle to start kind of spilling it all out at once. But in the book, I've put it together in an organized fashion, so I don't sound like Mel Gibson in Conspiracy Theory, going off wildly in all directions.
Well, don't worry about that.
Story would be one of the keys to really proving that they were creating mercenaries. They were creating killers. They were taking killers and directing them into killing the people that they wanted killed.
Oh, yeah, I understand that. And don't worry about sounding. You're presenting this great. So far, you're presenting this story very great. Now, at the same time, when they were giving him the LSD and the methamphetamines and all this other stuff, they were waterboarding him too as well?
Yeah, I guess. There was some very bad treatment going on there. How about handcuffs made of seat belts, car seat belts and padlocks? How would you feel? How would you feel if you were handcuffed to a serial killer who murdered and raped children? You were given drugs that blows your mind completely. Not only LSD, but drugs like scopolamine, horrible drug. And while you were undergoing this ordeal, you were handcuffed with seatbelts to a serial killer, child murderer, and he was overseeing you to make sure you didn't hurt yourself. Does that sound a little bizarre?
Yes, it's horrific. The whole thing is horrific. But real quick, back to this guy Lamb. Now, at the same time he was going through all these, was he being trained with firearms in there too as well? How did
No. This is one of the things that's so bizarre about this. When Matt Lamb was released, who released him would have to be absolutely sure that Matt Lamb would never be a danger again, that he would never want to kill anybody again, though God knows why he did it in the first place. They would have to be absolutely sure that before he was released, this would not happen again. He wouldn't relapse.
Right.
Well, as soon as he told the doctor, picture this, he's living with the doctor on his 200-acre farm, digging fence posts and doing manual labor. He tells the doctor that he wants to join the military. He wants to go to Israel. He has Israeli bonds from his grandmother, and he wants to go to Israel and join the military. Well, in my opinion, as soon as he says that, I would think, you mean you want to have a gun in your hand again? As far as I know, the only time he used guns was to murder people. So as soon as he talks about wanting to join a military, his whole existence comes into question again. Why would they, Barker says, with with his grandmother's Israeli bonds and my encouragement, he went to Israel where he joined the IDF and fought in the Yom Kippur War. The questions that brings up is amazing.
Yeah.
How did he get a passport? He's under a lieutenant governor's warrant. That's for life. As soon as there's any indication that he might be violent, he would be sent immediately back to Oak Ridge. No court, no nothing, just right back to the hospital. Obviously, he's not cured. But instead of that, he gets military training in Israel. Now, he's not the kind of guy you would want to give military training to in the first place. He then comes back to the farm. He's a psycho killer, obviously, still. And now he's got military training. So they send him off to the only other place where a war is going on, Rhodesia. Isn't that a bit odd? Doesn't it bring up some questions? Who directed this? Who was behind this guy going to Israel and then going to Rhodesia and getting a passport? And why would the Israeli government want him in the first place?
Yeah, this is all very, very strange. Now, a couple of questions now about Matthew Charles Lamb. Now, he's being given the waterboarding and the LSD and all this kind of stuff. But is there something else, like videos he's watching or chanting or repetition hypnosis? What else is going on to get him, to change him?
Well, Barker's program was essentially, he called it defense disrupting therapy. You can look that up. There's lots of published papers about defense disrupting therapy. It includes a lot of things, from sensory deprivation to drug treatments to outright physical torture. And this was continuous. I experienced it for 8 months. Matt Lamb experienced it for years.
Okay, now one more question too. Who else was on this farm with this guy Lamb and Dr. Baker?
There were 2 other patients. They actually called these, there were 3 of them on this farm at one time. They called them the 3 amigos, I think, something like that. The other 2, I can't really name them. They may one is still alive, and the one who is still alive, actually, at one point in this experience.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
Threatened me here in Vancouver. I started a lawsuit against this hospital. It went on for 16 years. That's a whole other story. But in the middle of this lawsuit, this guy, ex-patient, phoned me here in Vancouver at my business and threatened me. He was on Barker's side. He likes Barker. Barker is still his friend.
Barker is still alive today?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And you know what? It gets worse.
Okay.
He owns something today, what he's involved in. He's still in practice in Midland, Ontario. Look up something called the Canadian Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children.
Oh, my God.
Got that? Look it up. Seriously. Do some research. Look up E.T. Barker and the Canadian Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children.
Okay.
Look up the World Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. You'll find a picture of Jimmy Savile and Margaret Thatcher holding a check. Huh?
Get out of here, man.
Good reason to believe that Jimmy Savile actually visited Oak Ridge. Just think about the implications.
Now, this Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, what do they claim that they're doing? What is their story?
Wow. This society is very bizarre. To me, it's socialism gone mad. They rant and rave about commercialism, consumerism, and how that damages children, and how we need to get rid of a consumer society and raise children. You see, Barker believes that psychopaths were created in early childhood, like when they were very, very young. So if you ask me, what kind of job would he be in today? What would he be doing today? I would say, well, he's working with younger kids than we were. He's not working with teenagers. and 20-somethings, he'd be working with younger children. That's exactly what he's doing. He gets referrals from the courts.
Oh, my God.
There's bad stuff going on here. I can't really say too much broadcast on air, but all I can say is people should start looking into this society, who the founding members are. One of the founding members is a guy called Michael Mason. They just, on the website, you'll find Michael Mason as being one of the founding members of this. Well, Michael Mason was a patient in Oak Ridge. He was a killer. Doesn't say that anywhere on their background.
Okay.
Something really bad about that organization.
Now, you're telling me that if I go to this website right now, I will today, on September 29th, I will still see a picture of Jimmy Savile on there handing them a check?
No. This is all stuff that I put together.
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy Savile is involved in the World Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, who is the overall, the center of that. And Barker is the founder of the Canadian Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. I'm sure you see the connection.
Yeah, sure. There's no coincidence. Yeah.
There is. You can look up. You can find on Google, or I can send it to you. It will be on my website. The picture of Jimmy Savile and Margaret Thatcher accepting a check from someone. You can't really read the check who it's from, but a donation to, and he has his big smile on his face and his pink sunglasses.
Do we know?
You know the history of Jimmy Savile.
Oh, yeah. I've done shows on Jimmy Savile. Yeah, my audience is very familiar with Savile, yeah.
Anytime you see Jimmy Savile in connection with children, you know it's trouble.
Right.
Okay? So what I'm doing here is making the connection between Barker's present organization that he formed, that he was the founder of it, and Jimmy Savile.
Yeah.
Little things like that. When you make these small connections, and it all begins to add up into an overall picture that something's wrong with this thing. Even you have to read something about the Canadian Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children, or empathetic parenting. It's another word for this organization. You have to read what their platform is. When you understand what this foundation is about and who's behind it, it gets very, very creepy. On first glance, it might look like a nice organization. Isn't that nice? Preventing cruelty to children, an empathetic parenting thing. But when you look at the details behind it, something's rotten.
And what do they describe as the cruelty that they're preventing? Is that that the kids are involved in consumerism and things like that?
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
Oh, his idea is that we have to upset everything. We have to kind of upset our whole notion of how we raise children. Basically, women have to stay home and not work, and they have to be attached to their children. And basically, he wants to revolutionize the world. He's a man with a vision. Watch out for men with visions.
How old is Barker today?
He must be near 80.
And he's still out. And, okay, so he wasn't much older than you then when he was treating you, and he was in charge of this whole operation.
No, he seemed much older, of course, but you know, when you're 18, somebody that's maybe 30 seems a whole lot older.
Right. Okay, so he's still alive, and he's 80 years old now. Do we know who else is funding these organizations, the Society for Prevention of Children and Cruelty to Children?
Who knows? It's a big organization.
But it's
global. It's a global organization.
And are they publicly? Is it a state-run organization or is it a private organization?
It's private.
Is it nonprofit?
Yes.
Yeah, there's people who can look into that and find out exactly where they get all their funding from.
I would like to see that.
Yeah, we got to look into that. Okay,
Here's another thing. Speaking of where funding comes from, we'll take this back to the 1960s again.
Yeah.
When this F-word documentary that I told you about previously was filmed, in this documentary, there's one brief little section that shows this recording equipment in the capsule. The capsule was the isolation chamber where they put naked men, boys, teenagers, 5, 6, 7 of them naked for sometimes weeks on end. No windows, no doors. You suck food in through straws, through holes in the walls. There's a video camera in the ceiling recording the whole thing. Now, that video equipment, I showed this to a CBC producer. That's another story. But he looked at this equipment that you can see briefly in this documentary and said, that tape, that recording equipment is better than we had at the time. That's state-of-the-art stuff. So I looked into who funded it, who paid money for that. Well, the Donner Foundation. Do you know the Donner Foundation?
No. Is that related to the Donner Party?
Yes.
Oh, my God. Get out of here.
The Foundation donated $50,000 for this experiment, the capsule, the isolation chamber. Now, here's my question. There was hundreds and hundreds of hours of video shot, and I filmed some of it myself because, well, you'll read in the book. I was there behind that camera. I know the equipment. At the time, I didn't understand the significance, but now I do. Whoever was behind this put an awful lot of money into this. This is a government hospital. It's not a private hospital. So whatever research was going on was funded by the Donner Foundation, partly, at least to the tune of $50,000 to buy this video equipment. What I want to know is, where did those videos go? Who has them? Can someone track down when they were destroyed, who they were sent to? Picture hundreds of hours of naked men and boys on various mind-bending drugs like LSD in a padded room with no windows and doors.
How big was the room?
Oh, about 8 feet square.
And how many men and boys would be in this room?
As many as 5 or 6 at once. Sometimes just 2.
But naked, and then they would record what they were doing. What was going on in there? What would they be talking about? What would happen? Fights? What would go on in there?
Everything. I write about it in the book. I write about my experience where I was the person behind the camera watching Victor Hoffman, another spree killer. He killed his entire family. I think, 6 people, 5 or 6 people he killed. And this guy was one of the creepiest men I ever laid eyes on. Hannibal Lecter, incarnate, naked with 2 other guys.
And what did you see happening?
This thing was so bad that I covered when it was my duty to be the observer. I actually covered the window with a mat because I didn't want to see.
Okay, explain to people again who the Donner Party is and who this foundation is.
Well, I don't know what the connection is between the Donner Party. That's the party that got lost in the bush or something, froze to death or whatever.
Right.
The Donner Foundation. The only thing I know about them is they're a very right-wing U.S. foundation with lots of money. And why they would contribute $50,000 to this project, I have no idea, but I intend to find out.
Okay, this might be a good time to take a little commercial break. This is incredible stuff, and trust me, when people hear this show, you're going to get a ton of interviews right away.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
We've only scratched the surface of it. This is just the surface of it.
Don't let me slow you down. Okay, when we get back, this is incredible stuff. Now, we're here with Steve Smith. You're 67, right?
That's right.
Okay, lives in Canada. And he's the author of the book, The Psychopath Machine, A Story of Resistance and Survival. The website is not even up yet, but it's going to be up shortly. Now, is it The Psychopath or just Psychopath Machine?
The Psychopath.
ThePsychopathMachine.com. Now, we're going to be back with more of Steve Smith's stories right after these messages. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. We're here today with Steve Smith, the author of The Psychopath Machine, A Story of Resistance and Survival. His website, coming up is thepsychopathmachine.com. And this is a story about this Oak Ridge hospital where he's been put through hell and back. And it seems to be some kind of an operation breeding hitmen and mercenaries and all kinds of bizarre stuff. Now, is this Oak Ridge hospital, is it still in existence today?
No, it's not. They tore it to the ground a few years back.
Now, was it shut down in scandal, saying, hey, what's going on here is horrific and we need to shut it down?
The place has been under constant scandal for the last, 60 years plus. So finally, they tore down the horrible, ugly building that, well, when you see a picture of it, you'll know what I mean. It's the most oppressive building you've ever laid eyes on. They tore it to the ground and built a new facility, basically on the same site. It's another super maximum security prison for the hospital or for the criminally insane or whatever they call them now. I have no doubt that there is a need for this type of facility. They need someplace to hold people like that securely. But it wasn't Oak Ridge. No one should have been in a place like that. But it was built at the turn of the century when mental patients were really abused.
Yeah, there's a picture of the facility on the cover of the book. And so if you go to if you go to Amazon.com, you can see a cover of the book, and it's a gray, looks like Fort Knox almost.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, it's a horrific building. It has an evil look about it too. Everything about it. Hey, what about this? Now, was there anything going on there, like with the occult? Anything kind of occult activity? Did you notice?
I can't really say for sure. We're dealing with a bunch of mental patients who think all kinds of things. Now, there's something about Peter Woodcock, also known as Michael J. Kruger, changed his name to Kruger. Although I don't know how a person who has been incarcerated all their life can legally change their name. Peter Woodcock was a serial killer. He killed 4 children in the late 50s. But he spoke of something called the Brotherhood. Now, over the years, some books have been written about Peter Woodcock, and I think there's a misdirection going on with what the Brotherhood was. I spoke to Peter Woodcock about the Brotherhood. He introduced me to members of the Brotherhood. I knew who they were, and they were Germans. They were his friends who came to visit him, and later came to visit me as well through Peter Woodcock. And when I was released, I had no place to go. I went to live with one of these members, one of these Brotherhood members. Now, over the years, the books written about Peter Woodcock makes it look like the Brotherhood was Peter Woodcock's fantasy. Somebody even spoke of it being aliens. But no, the Brotherhood was absolutely real, and they were Germans, and they did come to Canada through Operation Paperclip. I know it. I have it.
Now, you lived with them. What were they up to?
Wow. They were some kind of religion. It's in the book. I describe it better in the book than I'd be able to here. All I can say is they weren't Christian.
Okay. Now, did you participate in their faith?
No, I watched it, but they wouldn't allow me.
Really? And then what kind of rituals and stuff and ceremonies were they doing as part of this faith?
It was in German. It was really weird. The only time that I ever saw any of their ceremony was I was sitting in the kitchen of their house in Toronto, and the wife, they were quite a lot older than me, probably in their 60s then. The wife told me that I couldn't participate, but I could watch from the kitchen. So I could see from the kitchen through the dining room into the living room where several other guests and 4 teenagers around my age participated in what I can only describe as a pretty bizarre ritual, all in German. So I haven't a clue what it was, but it was creepy and it was not Christian.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
Okay, and how long did you live with them?
Not long, maybe a month before I finally just ran away. Went back to Yorkville Village, which is where the hippies hung out. And they came looking for me as well. They actually tracked me down and tried to bring me back.
Now, and the ritual, did it involve like candles or
No,
no,
it's a book. Just a book and a coffee table and some really weird stuff with these two young girls. Yeah, it was kind of a sex thing, but no, there was no sex involved. It was just, all I can say is please read it. I don't even want to talk about it.
Okay. Then the book is called, again, The Psychopath Machine, A Story of Resistance and Survival. What else can you tell us about what you went through or what was going on there?
Okay, so I suppose I got off lucky. They half brainwashed me. I went through half the program, but then I managed to get out through something called a review board, which they didn't even tell me about. They didn't tell any of us about a review board, that I could actually have my case reviewed by an outside group of people, which I did as soon as I found out about, and they released me instantly. A couple of days later, I was gone, head spinning out on the street and off to Peter Woodcock's Brotherhood. I have a clinical record as well, which actually which says where I went. So, to back this up, I'm not making this up. There's the guy's name. It's in the book, and it's in my clinical record as well. So I got off lucky because I was only 8 months in this program. And I think what happened was, rather than brainwashing me, it screwed me up. For a lot of years, I was screwed up, went through a lot of difficulty. But I think it opened my eyes. I guess under those circumstances, the worst thing you can do for them is to half brainwash somebody. You want to either totally do it or not do it at all. Because by the time I was 19 or 20, I was awake to the bizarre things that they were up to. Most people my age had no idea.
No, one more time. This Peter Woodcock, he was a serial killer, but somehow he got released?
Oh, my God. Here's what he actually died in there. He died on his birthday in, I think, 2010. Peter Woodcock killed and raped 3 kids, actually more than that, but officially 3. He was a big deal in Toronto in the 50s. He was like absolute nightmare murder case. So he was in Oak Ridge all of his life. When I got there in 68, he had already been there more than 10 years before me. Eventually, first of all, I told you he changed his name to Kruger, no relation to Freddy Krueger. This Kruger had to do with the German Brotherhood, which he belonged to. He had to change his name to something German. Okay. So Peter Woodcock, or AKA Kruger, was released after more than 30 years in Oak Ridge. He was released on a 1-day pass, just a day pass. He killed again. They took him, get this, they took him to a movie. Guess what movie? Silence of the Lambs.
Get out of here.
I'm not freaking kidding. They took him to Silence of the Lambs. Right after watching that movie, he went and bought a hatchet at a hardware store and murdered another patient who had been previously released. So that was his 4th murder on a 1-day pass. Then he eventually died in Oak Ridge.
Now, these people you were living with, this Brotherhood, did you suspect them of being involved in murders too?
Well, you know what they were into? They were into child trafficking.
And they admitted this to you?
No, they didn't admit it, but over the years of putting things together, it becomes clear. There's a lot of names. There's a lot of names in this that are really interesting. Anyway, we'll get into that after the book gets out a little bit more. I might have overstepped some bounds. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens.
What do you mean? You might have overstepped? You might have said too much stuff in the books or said too much stuff in the interview?
No, in the book.
In the book. And you think you might get in trouble, get sued?
Well, we'll see. I don't care about getting sued. You can't sue somebody for speaking the truth.
Right.
And frankly, I don't think the people involved are going to want anything to go to court, because if they sue me, then it opens this up to cross-examination. And I don't think they want that.
Okay, but that's just... Now, when they let this guy out on this 1-day pass, was he supervised?
He was supervised by another mental patient.
This is unbelievable. What year was that?
what was it, 1980 something, early 80s, mid 80s.
Okay, so that wasn't like in the Stone Ages. That's in recent history. We had we were civilized in the 80s.
They let him out after 30 years and take him to Silence of the Lamb. Is it any surprise that he left the movie and went and killed James Kerr?
And how did he find this James Kerr? How did he find him?
He was a former mental patient. I guess he just found him when he was out on the day pass.
Oh, my God. Okay, but what else
But just imagine that. One day. They let him out after one day, and he murders the same day.
Yeah.
They said he was fine. They said he was cured. They thought he was safe to let him out. I call on that. I call bullshit on that. I think they let him out knowing he was going to go and do this. He was a test. They took him. You see, like I said, they were creating psychopathic killers and Manchurian candidates, and he was one. This was a test. They let him out after all this time, take him to Silence of the Lambs, and let's just sit back and watch what happens. No surprise, he killed someone.
Do you think maybe because they knew that maybe there was something within Silence of the Lambs that was designed to trigger a certain emotion in the general public, that, and then they could test it out on this extreme character, something like that?
Well, I can't go there. I'm not sure. It's a pretty creepy movie. But I have no doubt that if you asked me, should we take Peter Woodcock to Silence of the Lambs? I would say, are you nuts?
Yeah, I think everybody would say that, yeah.
So it's no surprise. If you do that, you could expect those results. So these are supposedly intelligent, educated people running this place. You tell me they didn't know that?
Now, were they intelligent, educated people when you were in contact with them? Did they come off that way to you?
Well, I mean, they're doctors. They have degrees.
Yeah.
So I assume they're educated. I mean, I assume that Barker and Boyd and all the rest of the people, the attendants might not have been so educated. They were thugs. They were basically brutes, big men with very small heads.
Really? And did you ever try and talk to them and negotiate or anything? Or did you try and escape?
Oh, no. There is no escape from there. It's impossible.
Okay.
I did escape from prison later, but that's another story.
Oh, boy. What a life. Yeah, in the book.
I'm not kidding, Ed. Listen to this.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding about this. It's in the book and it's documented. After Oak Ridge, I was not in the great shape. I was kind of screwed up, drugged, screwed up, and all the rest of it. For a number of years, it took me to...
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
Get my life underneath me. But in that time, I spent some time in a local jail, provincial jail. I don't know what the equivalent would be in the U.S., not a federal jail.
County jail.
Yeah. So I escaped. I worked in the machine shop in that jail. I made a gun like you see in the movies. The inmate makes a gun in the machine shop. It's precisely what I did and escaped.
Now, did you make a working gun or just a simulation?
It worked. I had no bullets, but as it turned out, the gun did work.
Get out of here. I tell you.
It's in the book.
What a life, man.
I understand that the gun is in a forensic museum in Ottawa. I'd like to go there and see it someday.
Yeah, I bet you would. Yeah, you got to do that. Before we leave the story too much of what went on, is there anything you want to tell us about what went on there at this hospital?
Wow. There's so much about what went on at this hospital.
We can go on another hour if you want. Okay, I'll give you all the time you want. Yeah.
It was a long time ago.
Right.
It was approaching 50 years now. And I just hope that the same kinds of things aren't going on now. I hope I hope they learned. I know they're concealing it. I know that Oak Ridge doesn't want this information out. I've been in communication with, there is an Oak Ridge website. I think it's called Remembering Oak Ridge, something like that. And I was in communication with the curator of that website. Actually asked her for permission to use a picture of Oak Ridge, but I don't think I really need to do that. It's the picture that's on the cover. I asked her for permission to use that, and we had a very friendly back and forth conversation for quite a while, but suddenly it just ended, and she won't return emails, won't communicate with me at all. So I know that she talked to the administrators of Oak Ridge, and they said, stay away from that guy. So we're going to see what happens with that. They don't like me.
I can imagine that, because they don't want people talking about this. Now, have you been threatened or harassed in any kind of way?
No.
Is this the first interview you're doing about this?
No, I actually did a CBC documentary.
Right.
Back in 90s, when was it? That was 97. The CBC took me back to Oak Ridge. Look up CBC Hannah Gartner, Bad Trip, it's called. The name of the documentary is Bad Trip with Hannah Gartner. She was a CBC news anchor. So we actually went back there and did a documentary, half-hour documentary inside Oak Ridge. And they treated me pretty well at that time, and there was some sympathy, but I could still see. I actually met with Peter Woodcock again. You got to see this documentary. It's astonishing.
Now,
it's amazing.
Are these documentaries, this one and the F word one you described, are they available like on Putlocker or online, YouTube, someplace where we could see them?
Not anywhere. The only place you can have them, I have VHS tapes sitting in front of me here on my desk. One is F word, copy 1, and the other is Bad Trip. But I have to get these off of VHS tape and onto a digital format so I can get them out there.
Yeah, that's simple. You can do that. You digitize it. It's like $50. It's really cheap.
I know, but I live way out in the country. I'm kind of isolated.
I'm
not sending these to anybody. I'm going to have to do it right here in front of me.
Yeah, I understand.
So I'll find a video machine. They're not even easy to find anymore. Maybe a junk store I can get one. I need to make copies of this. Now, here's what I did. 5 years ago, when John Ronson was doing research for the psychopath test,
right,
he contacted me through my lawyer, and I provided him a bunch of information. And at that time, I did have a VHS recorder. I've since thrown it away, unfortunately. But I took this F word out of a safety deposit box at the bank where I kept it, because I knew I had the only copy, and played the thing on my TV and filmed it with my digital camera,
right,
and sent that to John Ronson. Because at the time, I didn't really understand the significance, how important. I didn't understand as much about it as I do now. But John Ronson didn't do anything with it. He didn't even acknowledge receiving it. It was just part of the pile of documents, clinical records, and other things that I had acquired over the years about Oak Ridge. But I recall sending him the CD. It's pretty primitive, badly done, because it was just filmed off my TV. But he didn't acknowledge ever receiving that until recently, when this issue has come up again. He, on his Twitter account, I heard him say, I found a copy of it. But I'd like to remind him that I gave you that copy 5 years ago. Why did you sit on it for 5 years?
And explain to people, who is John Ronson and the psychopath test? Who is this?
John Ronson, he's an author. He's a best-selling author. He's a big deal. He's like A-list author. He wrote, I suppose people would best know him for Men Who Stare at Goats.
Okay, right. You told me, right. Okay.
I mean, George Clooney movie.
And you don't think it's possible that he just, because, I get people send me a lot of stuff too, and you don't always get to it, or things come up, you can't.
I know, but he solicited this from me. He's, I have the book in front of me right here, where he's autographed it, and it says, where is it? Hang on a sec. He says, to Steve, thank you so much for taking part in my book, and I hope you like it, or I hope you like how it came out, John. So I provided him with a ton of information about Oak Ridge, and I'm mentioned in this book. My name's in his page 75 in the book.
And that's the psychopath test.
Yeah, you can actually find that online. There's someplace where you can read part of the book online,
right, and
you can actually find the bit about me in there. I think if you Google Steve Smith and psychopath test, John Ronson, that kind of stuff, you'll find that.
And now what was he wrote the book, The Men Who Stare at Goats.
That's right.
Oh, and what was his involvement in that whole program?
Well, he wrote the book.
So he just observed it and wrote about it.
Yeah, he researched the, what John Ronson does is conspiracy theory stuff.
Right.
He apparently likes conspiracy theory books and goes into that. but I kind of wonder. I think he could do better.
Yeah, I got you. Now, how did you get your life together? You left there. You pretty much left there and nowhere to go. You went with this order, the Brotherhood, you said, right? The Brotherhood, these German guys. Then you had to escape from there and go live with some hippies, right? How did that work out?
Okay, well, eventually I made my way to Vancouver, which is what I set out to do in the first place before all of this got started. But 10 years later, 10 years after the fact, 1979, I made it out to Vancouver. January 1st, 1980, the apartment building that I lived in, called the Angus Apartments, burned to the ground. I'm pretty sure it had something to do with it. It's in the book. I think I know who burned it to the ground. And at that point, I knew they were after me. I knew someone was tracking me. Not paranoid, because I have a document proving it from the Ontario government. So I jumped on a plane and I flew to Central America. Boy, I tell you, this gets real weird.
Wait, before we get to Central America, okay, you're saying 10 years later they tracked you down. Is that because you were like keeping a low profile and you weren't, working on the books and stuff like that? They couldn't find you?
Well, let me put it this way.
Yeah.
I have a letter from the Ontario government, from the Solicitor General, inquiring about my whereabouts. A letter to Oak Ridge, dated May 1980, inquiring about my whereabouts, if they knew where I am, and asking for any information about me to be sent to the Solicitor General's office and mark it Special Project Records Division.
Get the hell out of here.
The letter is dated May of 1980. In May of 1980, I was in El Salvador. Do you know what happened in El Salvador in May of 1980?
Is that where those nuns got killed?
That's when, yes, and Oscar Romero.
Right.
I may have actually had read the book. I don't want to say this on air. I don't even know how to deal with this. I was there when Romero was assassinated.
Okay, how did you get a copy of this letter?
I think I might know who was involved.
How did you get a copy of this letter?
Freedom of Information. Okay. And I'm still working on it. Recently, just going on right now, I understand that whatever is involved in this special project with a file number and a signature, whatever is going on with this is significantly important. So a couple of months ago, I filed a Freedom of Access to Information asking about anything, any information about this special project. The first reply that I got from the Solicitor General was, there is no actionable records. Then I said, well, you mean that I have a document with a file number and my name on it that you don't have? How could there be no records of this when I have a record already? So now it's gone back on appeal. So I'm just waiting for them to come up with these documents.
Okay, so you went to South America and you wound up in El Salvador.
Yeah.
Why did you go to El Salvador?
I went from El Salvador. I went from Mexico City to Belize, to Guatemala, to El Salvador, Costa Rica, Honduras, Panama, Nicaragua, then flew to Colombia and down to Lima. Did that. Now, here's the thing. I can prove this because I was smart enough to keep my passport. I still have it. So I can show you the dates to back it up.
How were you financing all this travel?
I was working by then. I was making money. This was, I had already moved to Vancouver, and I had a decent job. I was making good money. But when my apartment building got burned down, I think I know who did it, and it scared the daylights out of me. So I just took off. It's in the book. I described what happened and how it. Here's an interesting thing about that apartment building. This was a major fire in the west end of Vancouver, January 1st, 1980. It was a five-alarm fire of a historic building. It was a huge apartment building. There is absolutely no record, not even in the Vancouver archives, of that building ever even existing. If it wasn't for one small news article that I found in the Prince George Digital Archives describing this fire of a landmark building burning to the ground, no one would even know the building ever existed. It's too damn weird. There's no record of it.
And you say you think you know who set fire to the building. Who is that? Can you talk about that?
Well, I can't give you a name, but the circumstances in the book of how that building burned down, what happened. I'm not positive. I can't say 100%, but I think that building might have burned down because I lived there.
Okay. And what were the circumstances that make you think that?
Well, January 1st, New Year's Day, I had a bit of a hangover, so I'm staying at home. I'm just cooking spaghetti. It's around supper time, warming up some spaghetti. And the fire alarm goes off. I'm on the ground floor. No, excuse me. Let me take it back a little bit. I'm on the ground floor. The doorbell rings, and it's a friend of my brother's through the intercom. This girl who I had met a couple of times, didn't particularly like her. She wasn't my kind of girl, put it that way. So I pushed the buzzer and let her in. About 5 minutes goes by, and she doesn't appear at my door. So it only takes like 30 seconds. I'm on the ground floor to walk down the hallway, and she's not at the door. So I open the door and look out into the hallway, and I see her coming down the stairs from, it's a kind of utility stairs that goes up to the garbage room.
Okay.
And I thought, well, that's odd. She comes in, talks to me for a few minutes, says Happy New Year or whatever, and okay, goodbye. Off she goes. About 15 minutes later, the fire alarm goes off. But it happened frequently in that building. It was an old building. It would go off occasionally. Didn't pay much attention. Then I looked out into the hallway and there's smoke. So I go outside, come back in, go outside. People are milling around. Then the fire department arrives, doesn't let anyone in. Then the building burns to the ground, like totally gone. I lost everything. I lost my paintings. I lost everything.
Now,
the fire started, actually, as it turns out, the fire started in the garbage room, which was up those stairs. So I don't know. What can I say? It's suspicious. I don't want to get paranoid and bent out of shape over it.
Right.
But I always thought, and that was 1980, it was a long time ago, I always thought, and I still do, that she had something to do with it.
And you said she was a friend of your brother's. Did you ask your brother if he thought it was her?
No, I was gone. 2 days later, I was in Mexico City.
And you've never talked to your brother about that ever since?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I talked to him about it. But he's dead now, by the way. He died a long time ago. He knew nothing. He didn't know anything about that. She wasn't really much of a friend.
Okay.
She knew him. He knew her. My brother was an entertainer. He was a stage hypnotist. Quite a well-known guy.
Older or younger brother?
I was very interested in the fact that my brother was a stage hypnotist.
Older or younger brother?
Older.
Okay, so now, did he ever hypnotize you?
No.
Now, what about when you were missing, when you were in this hospital? Was your brother looking for you and trying to get you out of there?
No, I actually thought he was dead. He had disappeared. This is a whole other story. Do you know the Laurel Canyon trip?
Yeah,
you know
sure.
what was going on in Laurel Canyon in the 60s?
Yeah. Dave McGowan practically made his bones here on my show, yeah. Okay,
so my brother was there. He had disappeared from Canada. Pretty mysterious circumstances, even how he disappeared. It's all in the book. Anyway, he spent about 10 years in the Laurel Canyon scene, where he was taken under the wing of a hypnotist in California, in Hollywood, who was really popular among the Hollywood elite. He would go and do these private shows in Hollywood Heights and Laurel Canyon.
Okay, what was his name? Do you know?
Yeah, it's McGee.
Okay.
Ira McGee.
Okay.
Ira McGee. So anyway, he taught my brother the trade. And I never heard from my brother for 10 years. I thought he was dead until one day he just showed up out of nowhere.
And where did he show up? Where you were?
Yeah, I was living in Toronto at the time. And he showed up. This is actually why I moved back to Vancouver. It's a kind of convoluted story. It's well organized in the book. I explain all of this chronologically and in a much more organized fashion.
And how did your brother find you?
Through my mother. She always knew where I was.
And what about when you were in the institution? Your mother wasn't trying to get you out?
No, she didn't know I was there.
She didn't know then. Okay.
Nobody knew I was there. I had a girlfriend. Do you know? Here's a neat thing too. I have a daughter who was born in 1969, and my girlfriend at the time, we were just hippies then. My girlfriend at the time was pregnant, and I didn't know it. When I got busted, when I wound up in Oak Ridge, they told her I was dead. She ultimately married someone else and didn't know for more than a decade that I was alive. My daughter is now, 45?
Do you have a relationship with her now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we did meet. That's in the book as well.
Okay, now you wind up down in El Salvador around the time that Archbishop Romero was assassinated. And during this time, the government and the right wing of El Salvador was doing that same kind of torture and that kind of stuff down there.
Oh, you bet.
Right. Now, so do you think it's any accident you wound up there at the same time? Or?
Well, it was my own choice. You know, it's not like I was driven to it. I went there.
Okay.
But I went there under, I wasn't going to something. I was running away from something. I really thought somebody was after me in Vancouver and burned my apartment down.
Right. Did you go to El Salvador with anybody or by yourself?
No, by myself. My whole travel's by myself.
Okay. But then you say you think you know what happened to Archbishop Romero, how he was assassinated. How did that come about?
Okay. It's in the book, but briefly I'll go through it.
Okay.
I was in Guatemala, and I was in a small town in Guatemala. I had an address that, oh my goodness, should I mention his name? A guy in Vancouver, or in Toronto, Hugh Whitney Morrison. Do you know the name Hugh Whitney Morrison?
That sounds very familiar, Hugh Whitney. You went, okay, who's he?
Okay, so he was the guy that I knew in Toronto. He's the son-in-law of Lemoyne Fitzgerald, one of the Canadian Group of Seven, and an associate of a guy called Intrepid. Do you know who Intrepid was?
No, I don't know.
Wow, this is where it just keeps getting stranger and stranger. Intrepid was the spy, the Canadian spy, who Ian Fleming based James Bond on.
Okay.
The whole James Bond story was based on Intrepid. You can look this stuff up. So I knew Hugh Whitney Morrison. Hugh Whitney Morrison was part of the Brotherhood, although he wasn't German.
So you met him during this time when you were they first released you, when you were living with that Brotherhood.
That's right. Shortly after, I met Hugh Whitney Morrison. He got a job for me.
Doing what?
Picture framing. He got a job and an apartment.
And he was down in El Salvador with you?
Oh, no. He gave me an address of someone in Guatemala.
Okay.
And, well, you look up Hugh Whitney Morrison's background. You'll see this guy was a big spy in El Salvador. He ran an airline, and I'm pretty sure they were running drugs and probably children in and out of Central America. So he gave me an address in Guatemala. I went to that address in Guatemala, and this guy was a hitman. He was a Guatemalan death squad. And through him, oh my God, you got to read the book.
Well, let me ask you a question. We're definitely going to read the book, okay? And the book is called The Psychopath Machine, A Story of Resistance and Survival. Now, when you got involved with this Brotherhood, you took off from them. Now, weren't you hiding from them? How did you get back in touch with this guy like Hugh Whitney Morrison and stuff?
They introduced me to Hugh Whitney Morrison.
Right.
And he got me a job. He provided me with a job and an apartment. He was just a nice guy. He was helping me out. I didn't question anything about that at the time. And here's the thing. I keep everything. And fortunate for me that I do, because I have a signed book as well from Hugh Whitney Morrison, autographed to me with my name on it. And he says, "To Steve Smith, artist, with my corrections."
Oh, that's interesting. What do you mean by that?
I don't know. But I have the book, artist, with my corrections.
Is he still alive today?
Anyway, there's the book. If anybody came to me with a story like mine, I wouldn't believe him.
Right.
I would not believe it. The twists and turns, the convoluted stuff, all the people involved, people who are well known, who have like history and they're historic figures. I wouldn't believe this story, except I have the stuff to back it up. And that's what really counts. The thing I learned early on with this is don't talk about it unless you can somehow prove it.
Listen, I've had a similar life myself, okay? So, and I can relate to what you're saying. Now, what other historic figures did this order introduce you to?
Who knows who's historic? One leads to another.
Yeah.
Mr. Wieland introduced me to Mr. Morrison. Mr. Morrison introduced me to the Central American stuff. That's how that went. It had to do with cocaine and child trafficking.
Right. Now, were you involved in
ugly stuff?
Were you involved in moving coke around too at this time?
Damn near. I almost got entrapped. They tried to entrap me and put me in jail for life using cocaine. It's in the book as well. But fortunately, I had the sense to realize that somebody was trying to trap me and avoided it.
What, they tried to set you up in a deal and you didn't go through the deal?
Yeah, total setup. Totally set up.
Okay, then you talk about how these people were involved in child trafficking. You witnessed this? How do you know this?
Well, because I saw the Guatemalan guy kill one family and take the kids, tie them up with baling wire, throw them in the back of a flatbed truck with me sitting in between these two assholes, these two guys, these hitmen.
Right.
And I asked him what happens to the kids. And he says, "We sell them like bananas," and laughed. I wanted to kill the guy on the spot. He had a gun on his hip and was rubbing against my thigh in the front of the truck. God damn. I was so tempted to grab that gun, but I knew it wouldn't work.
Yeah, these guys are pros, right? So you really wouldn't have a chance.
Yeah. But anyway, I'll never forget that. You know what Mayan girls look like, Mayan Indians.
Yeah.
Very tiny. Hard to tell how old they are. Well, two of them wrapped up in baling wire, tossed into the back of a truck. And he said, we sell them like bananas. And he laughed.
And did you ever try and report any of this to the police or anything?
No. Report to the police. Are you kidding? This is in El Salvador. Or no, that was Guatemala.
Right.
You don't report anything to the police in Guatemala.
What else can you share with us with this story?
Wow.
The psychopath machine, the story of resistance.
I'd like for you to talk to me again after reading the book, because there's so many things in the book that are well organized, and it's difficult to sit here and tell you about all of this because It's so complex.
Did you actually send me a copy of the book?
Oh, for sure. You bet. And I want to send you a copy of F-Ward.
No, no, I want to see that too, especially yet. But did you send a copy of the book or?
Not yet. I don't have an address.
Okay, then okay.
I'll get an address from you and send you some of the stuff that I have that'll show you what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll definitely do another, maybe a couple more shows. This is definitely great stuff. Now, did you ever wind up getting married and having your own family and stuff?
Oh yeah. I've been married for 20 years.
And what does your wife say about all this?
Wow. First thing, my wife is 15 years younger than me.
Okay.
Good for we live together, we work together, we started our business together. We've taken care of ourselves, each other, and our business for 20 years. And we grew it from nothing into a happy retirement in the country. But we're still so damn busy. We started another business out here as a hobby, and now it takes up all of our time. It's just, we can't travel anymore. We're so damn busy. We're trying to sell this business. So we've been fortunate. We did really well. I have a really, really good life. I have an acre of land. It's a bed and breakfast, and it's really beautiful. It's one of the nicest parts of Canada and one of the nicest, very small villages in the nicest part of Canada that we're fortunate enough to live in.
And what is this new business you're running now?
This is pretty interesting. You know, for years we ran a plastic fabricating business.
Right.
So when we moved out here, we closed the business in Vancouver. That was 7 years ago. And we bought a bed and breakfast, which is on this acreage. And we ran that for a while, but decided I need a workshop. So I reopened a workshop and started doing plastic stuff again, just kind of local things. And then we started making wedding cake toppers. Bet you never heard of that. You know, the thing that goes on top of a wedding cake?
Yeah.
Okay, so we make those. You can find our store on Etsy. And we're selling, oh, good heavens, we're selling more than 1,000 of them a month, shipping them out worldwide. So it keeps me so busy that I don't have time to do this interview.
Well, yeah. I did get you to say
but we don't want to do it. We want to quit. We want to go traveling. We want to enjoy our retirement. But frankly, I hate to put it this way, but we're making so much money doing this that what day do you say, okay, that's it, we quit? It started as a hobby and it just snowballed. It's keeping us very busy.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot of overhead either if you're doing it off Etsy. You know,
it's our own. It's our property. We have two part-time employees and my wife and myself. One girl does shipping, another girl does graphics, and we stay at home. Everything is done on the property. Sometimes weeks go by, I never leave the property.
All right. Okay, so before we go, now, is there anything you want to sum up and tell us?
I can't sum this up.
Right.
The story will probably never be summed up. I wrote the book to get this all out, to get it all in some kind of organized fashion. It took me a year and a half to write it. So I kept organized, I kept it chronological, and I stuck entirely to the truth. Every word of this book is true. As bizarre as it is, some of it seems unbelievable, but it's the absolute truth and I stand by it. So what I hope to do with this is pass this on to somebody else. I have other things I want to do. I got on with my life and I'm not obsessive about this. It doesn't.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.
It doesn't rule my life, but writing the book hopefully might be my final act in this story. We may well sell out our property and move to the south of Japan. My wife is Japanese, so we can live there.
Really? Now, you've traveled all over, though, so it's not that unusual for you to travel. But do you know Japanese, how to speak Japanese?
No, oddly enough, I've been married to a Japanese lady for 20 years and can't speak a word of it.
Okay. Now, how did you meet TJ?
Odd. You know, I met TJ on the internet, some conspiracy forum a long, long time ago. I don't know how many years ago, maybe 7 years ago.
Okay.
We talked for a while back and forth. Then he found out that I was a Freemason. I've been a Freemason for 25 years, by the way.
Okay.
And don't think anything of it. The whole thing is bullshit.
Okay.
People throw stones at it. People get all bent out of shape over Masons and, you know, they rule the world and all this conspiracy stuff. In my opinion, it's nothing but a bunch of gray-haired old men, good old boys in a fraternal club. I was never a joiner of fraternities. I'm never into that. But I joined it out of curiosity, and somebody made the offer, so I took them up on it. So I met TJ, and we had a long discussion back and forth about a lot of things. Then when he found out I was a Mason, he freaked out and disappeared. So he thought I was some kind of, I don't know, he thought I was dangerous to him. But then years went by, and he learned what I've known all along. And he thought, I wish I knew then what I know now about Masons. I wouldn't have been so freaked out by it. So we're back in contact, and he's much more mature now than he was then.
Now, do you have like a faith? Do you believe in God or Christianity or?
I don't know, Ed. I don't know. I can't say I'm Christian. I can't say I'm not. It's, I think there's much more to this than any of us know. I think our existence is more complicated, but I just don't know. I don't subscribe to any formal religion, but I'm not a disbeliever, put it that way.
Now, when you were hanging out in this conspiracy forum with TJ, would you tell people about what went on to you down there at the hospital? I
think I probably would bring that up. But, back in those times, I had to be careful about how I approached this. I got discredited so many times that people just jumped on me. I didn't want to bring this stuff out unless people believed it. I didn't want to stick my head out there like, I don't know, there's, what's her name, Kathy O'Brien?
Right.
What can I say? If it was true, there would be a paper trail. If what she speaks of, there would be documentation. She'd be able to prove it with something other than her word. And I'm not really seeing that. There may be, but I'm not seeing it. So I didn't want to be in that position myself. Aside from that, I was running a business. I had a public face. So, I was a little reluctant to step out into this. Now I'm fine because I don't have the business anymore. It's kind of in the background. I'm semi-retired. I'm not I don't have clients coming in my front door all the time that might say, hey, I saw that. What's up with you?
Now, have you listened to my interview with Kathy O'Brien?
I haven't. No, I hate to say this, Ed, but this is the first time I heard of you.
Okay. I try and keep a low profile.
No, apparently you don't.
Yeah, but
I will listen from now on, though.
My interview with Kathy O'Brien is very interesting. They were very evasive. I questioned them the same way I'm questioning you, and they were very, very evasive. And it got a little contentious toward the end there. I just got a little impatient with them, avoiding every question.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Now,
I don't want to say anything about somebody else's thing. It's like everyone has to come to their own conclusion about that. My conclusion is, if it was true, you'd be able to prove it.
Now,
at least be something to back it up other than your words.
Now, in your book, do you actually have photocopies of these Freedom of Information Act requests and this kind of stuff?
Sure do.
It's all.
I even included in the back pages a copy of my passport to prove that I was where I was when I said that I was.
Okay, I tell you, my audience loves that kind of stuff, man. The more kind of documents and stuff and the obscure police reports and stuff, they just love that kind of stuff, man.
It counts, and I have tons of it. I have boxes and boxes of it. I have, that I carried on an email conversation with Dr. Barker.
Yeah, right. I was going to ask you about that. How'd that come about?
Yeah, this is really significant. We didn't touch on that. This is something really important. We carried on before I filed the lawsuit, before he knew that I was suing him, I sent him an email. I found his email through the Canadian Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. That was his email. So I emailed him and said, I wonder if you remember me. We should talk. So he replied. I was surprised that he did. So we went off onto this conversation that went on for a couple of months. There's like more than 50 pages of email conversation. We exchanged all kinds of ideas. We got very friendly, very philosophical. I actually got to like the guy. I don't know, Stockholm Syndrome maybe.
Yeah.
But we got along very well. And looking back on this, I have all of this entire conversation as well. This is where he told me about Matt Lamb being on the farm. And with his encouragement, he sent him off to Israel. He told me a lot of things that he shouldn't have told me. The guy's a bit of a loose cannon, by the way. If he's involved in some conspiracy, he's the guy they better watch out for because he shoots his mouth off too much. He talked too much. And in this email exchange, he said some things that are just bizarre, beyond bizarre. At one point, for example, keep in mind, he's a doctor. He's a psychiatrist. He's published all kinds of papers. He has all kinds of background. Near the end of our conversation, he writes to me, I'll paraphrase this, but he said, speaking of religion, he said, I guess you don't know this, but I was a man of the cloth back when I was your age. When he was 19.
Really?
He said, my trusty Bible just fell on the floor and happened to open to chapter 23 of Revelations. And it reminded me of you and I. So he quoted it to me. He gave me this biblical quote. And it starts, it's all in biblical language. And it sounds great. Only problem is it doesn't exist. There's no such thing. Revelations ends at chapter 22. I took the time to look it up. There is no chapter 23. And he totally made this up. I took this quote to a minister, just found some priest that might want to read this, tell me something about it. And it really pissed him off. He got angry with me. He said, where did you get such trash? This is evil. This is like anyone that would write something like this. He took the anger out on me. So stunning, absolutely stunning quote. What it reminds me of is the word buttercup. Do you know that?
No.
Heard from Manchurian Candidate.
Oh, gotcha. Right. Right, I understand now, yeah.
It's a trigger phrase. I'm pretty sure of it. It had no effect on me other than to make me go, what the hell is this? Why on earth would he, why would he write such a thing? And what kind of thinking does it take to make up something like this? You have to read it. It's like, I don't know, it's maybe 15 or 20 biblical sounding lines, like, yea, though I walk through the valley of blah, blah, blah. It sounds biblical, but it's totally made up.
And do you have that in the book?
I also asked a psychiatrist involved in the lawsuit, a guy we hired as a professional witness or a professional consultant. He interviewed me twice and determined I'm not nuts and never was. But I asked him, why would Barker write something like this? And this doctor, who is also a renowned doctor, he's an expert witness in a lot of cases. He said something you don't often hear from a psychiatrist. He said, because he's nuts.
Do you have that those emails are in the book?
Oh, yeah.
And that portion of the scripture, the made-up scriptures in the book, too?
I believe I did.
Okay. I hope so.
It's there. Yeah, it's there.
Now, to deal with all this, have you gone through any kind of therapy or anything like that to deal with all this?
No. I'm the last guy in the world that would go through therapy.
Okay. Now,
sorry.
Now, the thing is, too, the idea behind trauma-based mind control is you put people through this trauma and then you turn them into kind of controlled robots, like you said, like the Manchurian Candidate with Buttercup, the code word.
Yeah.
Now, and then you find yourself later on with these people down there in Guatemala, the hitman with the child trafficking. You find yourself with these people, the Brotherhood with these, I guess, German Nazis, with the child trafficking over there. You find yourself over in El Salvador where Bishop Romero is murdered. Do you think it's possible, like just like these other people, Woodcock, I believe was the man's name, who went off to Israel to become an assassin in Israel, that possibly you could have been controlled throughout your life and just not realize it?
I don't think so. Like I said, the worst thing you can do is to half brainwash someone.
Right.
Because they didn't succeed with me. I actually escaped their clutches. And they didn't like it. I have my discharge from my clinical record. The last paper, the last comment in the clinical record is about my discharge. and the anger expressed by these people, you can just read into it. You can sense how pissed off they were that I actually got out from under them.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They were pissed.
And you have those discharge papers too? Those are in the book as well?
Yep.
Oh, boy.
At one point, to show another thing in the clinical record, somebody writes a comment in there, along with all the drug stuff they're giving me. Somebody writes about me saying that I suffer from the hippie syndrome. The hippie syndrome. You see their mindset? Everything is a syndrome.
Right. Now, when they were giving you like methamphetamine in there too, right?
Yeah.
Now, so when you got out, did you have any kind of addictions?
Yep, big time. It's in the book.
To what?
Oh, yeah, speed.
Speed, okay.
Yeah, when they bumped me out the front door, actually, when I bumped myself out the front door, I was totally addicted to speed and never did speed in my life before that, would never, ever consider sticking a needle in my arm. I would be as averse to that as I am now, but that was the result of Oak Ridge. I got to tell you, I crashed and burned. I got in a lot of trouble after Oak Ridge. I never hurt anybody. I never killed anybody. I never committed any horrible crimes, but it's in the book.
Okay, so they were giving you speed intravenously.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, methamphetamine intravenous.
So then, okay, which is pretty intense. But now when you left there, so you had to keep that up.
Yep.
And so how were you supporting that habit? Crime?
No. I actually stole some money from the poor box in a church once. I did that.
It's amazing what people will do, It's just
I know.
Yeah.
I know. But petty crime, maybe, but, I wasn't a successful criminal. I couldn't even commit a break and enter without screwing it up. I'm in terms of actual criminal history, the only thing that I can attribute anything that I did wrong, the worst thing I ever did was escape from prison, but essentially was to save my life.
Right. Now, and by making your own gun in the metal shop, that's...
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, it's all there. It's like I know it sounds like a bad movie.
I know. I think it would be a great movie. I think this would be a great movie.
That'd be nice.
Now, what about inside the? I forget the name of the hospital again.
Oak Ridge.
Oak Ridge. Sexual abuse of the inmates.
Oh man, I'm sure it went on all the time. I can say nothing ever happened to me that I was conscious of. But there was a number of times that I was completely unconscious and handcuffed to some very bad people.
Oh, my God.
Do you know what scopolamine does? Do you know what scopolamine is?
I have never heard of that before I read it in the description of the book.
Okay, you need to know about this. And you can find out, there's a lot of really good internet information about scopolamine. Look up something called devil's breath, the most scary drug in the world. Just email devil's breath. This is the drug. This is the supposed date rape drug. What happens with scopolamine? You're completely gone. You're in delirium. This is a zombie drug. This is the drug that they use in Haiti and in Central America, where apparently they can just blow it in your face.
Right.
And seconds later, they own you. They can take you to an ATM, empty your bank account, take you home, steal all your furniture, and you'll help them. Or, worst case, you wake up in a hotel room bathtub full of ice, missing a kidney.
Yeah, I've heard of devil's breath. I've heard of that, devil's breath.
Look it up. This was one of the major drugs that they used in Oak Ridge, and I got a lot of it. So you ask about abuse. Well, that's abuse right there. But I cannot tell you what might have happened when I wasn't there.
Now when you got out, you had to keep up the meth habit. You had no you couldn't. And there's no control over that. You just have to,
Yeah.
But now, what about? Did you ever go back to LSD?
No. I only did it a few times in my life. Once, which got me into that, and a few times recreationally after that.
But inside but they were giving it to you inside the hospital too, right?
Oh yeah.
Now, were you enjoying those trips, or were it just too massive and too?
You can't enjoy anything in there.
Yeah,
this is not an environment where you're going to enjoy it. You would enjoy nothing, no matter what came your way. This was a place beyond joy.
What about the food? What'd you eat?
Nothing memorable. I recall eating off paper plates. Not even a plastic knife and fork. Just eat with your hands with paper plates.
Really?
Depends what circumstance you were in. Some people had more privileges than others, and they actually got to use a melamine plate and I guess a knife and fork, but probably not a knife. Maybe a spoon. And
what about alcohol?
Oh yeah, that's another one of the drugs they used. Alcohol. I never got any. I never, they never offered me a drink, bastards.
but they were giving it to the other inmates.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, that's right. Alcohol was another of the, you know what? I'm pretty sure that they used some hookers too.
Really?
Yeah, I think there was a nurse. I can't prove this, but I believe that there was a nurse who was, her job was essentially to be a real nurse in the nursing sense.
Having sex with the inmates.
I think so. And she later went to work with Barker on the farm when Matt Lamb and two others were there. This nurse was also there. So who knows?
That is just so bizarre, this whole thing about this farm. Now, what about TV sets? Did you watch TV, movies?
No.
Books?
No.
How many books?
No books. Only the papers that Barker provided. And these papers were basically Chinese brainwashing type stuff about confession writing. You write a long confession about all of this and that and this and that, and then you get judged by other inmates. What was going on in Oak Ridge was Barker's program had the inmates in control of the program.
And you would be forced to write out confessions. When you would write out your confession, would it be real stuff that happened, or would you make it up?
Sometimes you had to make it up. You had to confess to things that why would I confess to that? There's nothing to confess to. Really, I was an innocent kid then. I was only 19. I'd had a bit of a hard life with parents and stuff, but not so bad. I was doing all right in my life. So I didn't really have a lot to confess.
And
it's not like, how did you feel before you murdered those 3 kids or
right.
Stuff like that. I had nothing like that to confess.
And then the other inmates would judge the confession?
Yeah.
And
not only that, the inmates were also in charge of punishment. If you were to do something, for example, like this, you're sitting in a room with 8 or 10 inmates, and you're being forced to memorize papers about manipulation and defenses and whatever. You're being forced to memorize this stuff. And you do something as simple as turn your eyes to the ceiling in disgust, like screw this kind of body motion. These inmates would punish you. They would have committees that you would sit before this committee, and the inmates would judge what kind of punishment you should have. It could be drugs. It could have your room stripped so you're sleeping on a cement floor, take away your cigarettes, whatever. The inmates decided what kind of punishment. And what's more, the inmates decided who should get what drugs. If it was decided by a committee of inmates that you should get LSD and scopolamine, then you would get LSD and scopolamine. The inmates decided. This is literally, the inmates had taken over the asylum. This was Barker's program. This is how he ran it. And in the end, that's why the whole thing collapsed, because the attendants that were supposed to take care of these dangerous people got so freaked out by it that they went on strike, and they forced the closure of his defense disrupting therapy. But that was long after I was gone.
What about like X-rays, MRIs, anything like that?
No, MRIs didn't exist then.
Right. X-rays?
No, they had no equipment like that. They did do lobotomies there.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, with an ice pick.
Oh my God.
I'm serious.
Now, was this under surgical conditions, or just pull the guy in a corner and just stick one in an ice pick?
Well, I never saw it done, put it that way. God. But I know lobotomies were done with ice picks.
And so did you know people in there that, you saw them before the lobotomy, then after the lobotomy?
No, but I did see a guy who had a lobotomy that way, who had always been there. He'd been there for decades, I guess. But they gave him a lobotomy because he threw some food at an attendant at one point many years before. But it was really odd. He was an intelligent man. He still was, even with the lobotomy. But he would do the strangest thing. Like one hand would be buttoning up his shirt while the other hand follows it unbuttoning.
Oh, really?
He didn't know. One hand would not know what the other hand was doing.
Now, could he consciously say, boy, what am I doing here? Or, I didn't realize I was doing this, or he just had no idea he was doing it at all?
He had no idea he was doing it.
Okay.
But he would occasionally he was a very quiet man. All I recall, I think his name was Joe or something. Didn't know him well. But in these groups, in these inmate groups or patient groups, never call him an inmate. You get in trouble for that. Patient groups, he would occasionally make a comment. And every time he made a comment, I thought, wow, that guy's not he's not mindless. He's not like brain damaged gone. He's very smart. And I was young enough to still recognize that.
You were allowed to have cigarettes.
Oh, yeah. Everybody smoked that. Rollies.
You had to roll your own.
Yeah.
Now, how'd you get that? Did you have to work to earn the cigarettes or what?
Yeah, there was, they actually had a token economy. At one point in one ward, I remember actually earning tokens, these little brown, about the size of a penny, little copper or something or other, that were tokens that you could use to buy cigarettes or a chocolate bar or something like that.
Okay, and what kind of work did you have
But
to do?
Cigarettes were provided as well. I think people got a certain amount of tobacco a month.
Interesting how they would give you tobacco, you know? Now,
well, that was a long time ago, though. That was, keep in mind, the attitude about smoking. You could smoke in a movie theater then. You could smoke anywhere.
I remember.
Watch old movies. People were smoking, sitting beside their kids, and it was all different.
No, he was smoking in the doctor's office. I remember our doctor would
Yeah,
be
that's
smoking.
right. Yeah. The doctor was smoking, too.
Yeah, I remember. I could tell you stories.
That's how it was then.
Yeah, I went through some pediatrician stuff, too. Okay, now, was there like an underground economy, too? Like you guys bartering, like a black market?
Oh, no. Everything was totally 24 hours a day monitored. Nothing happened in there without it being monitored. No underground anything.
Okay, but they gave you. And what kind of jobs did you do to earn the tokens?
There was a baseball making thing. I never did that, but people made baseballs. There was a shop in there that made baseballs. What else was there? See, I never really got to participate in that. I just knew about it. Sweeping floors, I guess. You know, if you were on the cleaning crew, you would be tasked to clean this place or clean that place. No real productive work.
Right. Now, you said if you were sexually abused, you were unaware of it, but you witnessed other inmates being sexually abused?
Yeah, in the capsule.
Right.
You know, when I was observing, I saw, I don't know, I can't even call it sexual abuse. It was you don't want to see this stuff. If you're not gay, and you'll get your eyes burned by looking at some things. You don't want to see it. It's like a nightmare. So you cover it up. You don't look at it.
So it's more like sexual torture.
Well, no, this is consensual. It's, you know, when you see F word video,
right,
you will see men lying on the floor. They're clothes. They actually have clothes on because CTV was filming this as a documentary. But in reality, what you see on F word, those men would be naked. So you just watch that video and let your mind imagine how it would be if it was not being filmed for CTV, but being filmed for the Donner Foundation that paid for the very expensive video equipment. You don't want to see that. I was only 18, but I don't want to see that.
Now, did this have an effect on you, on your personal life and your sex life?
I don't think so. Okay. I'm fine.
Wow.
Even at 67, I'm fine. No Viagra, not necessary.
I don't think we're fine.
I tried it once. We're traveling somewhere. I don't like it. It's horrible. It gave me a headache.
What, Viagra? Yeah, I don't like it either.
I tried it once. It's awful.
Okay. Oh, boy. Is there anything? We only got about 5 minutes left. Is there anything else you could think we need to know?
You could cut out the Viagra part.
But is there anything else you think we need to know?
Ed, there's tons of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, I can't pour it all out. I can't get to it all at once. This stuff, what remains of this is going to have to be put together bit by bit. And I suppose somebody smarter than me is going to have to take these documents that I have and put them together into a fashion that's going to actually make a difference.
Now, you have these documents. Do you have copies of these documents saved, scrolled away so you don't get burned down again?
Oh, yeah. No, all this stuff I acquired more recently recently. I call that 20 years is recent. When you're 67, 20 years is not long ago.
Right. Okay, but so you have it stashed away that no one can burn it down. Okay.
No, I'm good with this. I've got copies, and the only thing is F Ward, the only copy in the world of the original tape is what's sitting in front of me.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, Stephen Smith, the book is The Psychopath Machine, A Story of Resistance and Survival. You can get the book on Amazon.com. Also in the Opperman Report bookstore, The Psychopath Machine, A Story of Resistance and Survival. His book, his website coming up will be thepsychopathmachine.com. Mr. Smith, I can't thank you enough. I know it's tough to talk about this kind of stuff, to bring back all these memories. And
it's okay.
Yeah, I can't thank you enough.
To it.
Yeah, I can imagine. What a life.
It's a long time ago. It's history. I just hope we can do something to expose this and really get to the bottom of it. And I really appreciate this interview. It goes a long ways in that direction.
And I'm going to send you those links I was telling you about to get more interviews and stuff. I think a lot of people are going to be interested in this story.
And give me a mailing address. I'm going to send you afterward as soon as I get it digitized.
I'm going to get you that in a couple of minutes.
Excellent.
Stephen Smith, thank you so much.
Good night.
Bye. Okay. Now, that's some pretty good stuff, guys. Okay. Stephen Smith, The Psychopath Machine, A Story of Resistance and Survival. You can hear the guy has that ring of truth, you know. I can't wait to get a copy of this book. And maybe we can even help him out, too, put him in touch with someone like William Ramsey, who can get all this, look through this material with a second eye, you know, second opinion. Incredible stuff, okay? Stephen Smith, The Psychopath Machine, thepsychopathmachine.com, and the book is The Psychopath Machine, A Story of Resistance and Survival. Thank you so much.
Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities. Fentanyl. It could be hiding anywhere, including in your house, including in your medicine cabinet, or maybe at a friend's house when you're hanging out, playing games, and get offered a pill. Don't take chances. If a drug didn't come from a pharmacy directly to you, you can find fentanyl using a simple strip you can pick up at your local pharmacy. Don't take it until you test it, because fentanyl can be hiding anywhere. Brought to you by the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Mental Disabilities.